Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 200 and something, whatever it is, Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We have passed the 100-day mark in the Trump miasma, and we've got a ton to talk about. We're starting with 41 people. It is 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Eastern on Cinco de Mayo. We're all here to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, and God knows what else. We got an incredible lineup. We have a mayor who's being deposed, Mayor HEIDE LAMBERT of Waldport, Oregon. We're going to talk about the right-wing coup d'etat that's been aimed at her. It's going to start with a poem from the wonderful Mimi German. We're going to be joined by Sharon and Dick of the LAprogressive.org in LA.com, actually. Second hour, we're going to jump in big time on energy and the environment. We have a victorious road fighter who's going to join us, thanks to Mike Hersh, being engineered as always by the great Steve Caruso in Central Ohio. And just, I do want to celebrate the election of Donald Trump as the new pope. He actually put out, I think many of you have seen it, Donald Trump put out an AI generated image of himself as Pope. Now, this would be quite, whatever if it had been done by activists, but it was actually Donald Trump who put out the image of Donald Trump as Pope. Um, um, Hard to top that one. Tatanka Bricka is with us with his usual great genius to enhance the call. We have so many great people with us now. Dennis Bernstein, the host of the Flashpoint show. Alyssa Matras, how you doing, Alyssa, from Chicago? So many great people. We're already up to 50. And so let's rock and roll. Mimi, we are honored. You're in rattlesnake country, planting wildflowers, and you've got a poem for us. Oh, Dave Saltman's with it. Hey, Salty. You want to start us, Mimi, with your great poem, and then we're going to go to the mayor, and we're going to rock and roll. Mimi, can you hear? Are you there?
Oh, okay. Am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted.
Okay, cool. I was just saying, I don't know how great this is, but it is a poem, and
Well, it's always great
I,
coming from you, so
I,
let's hear it.
I'm happy to share it, and I'm really happy that Heidi is on today as well. So this poem is called "Kidnapping the Rubicon." You know, it was.
I like that. That's a
Thank,
good, you can stop right there. It's a great line. But go
thank you.
ahead.
Counterpunch just published this, which was nice. Okay, kidnapping the Rubicon. They are arresting the judges, kidnapping the Rubicon, slashing the songs of spring warblers. There is no time left to look for saviors or rain from clouds or ghosts of gods. The tree of life, survivor of the unsurvivable, clings to cliff sides suspended over the bardo, roots exposed, naked, battered by king tides and mighty winds. They say this year will be her last. Beware the raven's caw and the stench of those who pose as preachers on the doorsteps of civility. Here's where the jet stream crashes, where chaos alights and laughter disappears. Hearts sag to the pounding surf while democracy is cast like dice into the lukewarm waters of who cares anyway. Thank you. Oh, Sluggo, I think you're muted.
There we go. We care. That was a beautiful poem, Mimi. Thank you very much. And I was like in the middle of outer space here, but that's cool. Someday, Steve, you'll help me get back my wonderful ocean background. But Mimi German, thank you so much. Be careful as you're planting out in rattlesnake country. And we want to talk now, thanks to you, with the mayor of Waldport, Oregon, who had the duly elected mayor, and Mayor HEIDE LAMBERT. Now that I see you, I do remember knowing you over the years. You are a native of the Hanford Reservation, by which we don't mean an Indian reservation, we mean a nuclear reservation. And your father was a nuclear engineer, apparently, but you have been an anti-nuclear activist. Someday you can explain the family dynamic of how the daughter of a nuclear engineer becomes and sustains a career as a no nuker. But you were duly elected the mayor of Waldport, Oregon, right? A
So
bus.
I was elected the mayor, not duly.
And what is the population of Waldport, Oregon?
It's about 2,000.
And then tell us now, and we're going to talk when you're follow up with you on what's happening to judges around the country, including a judge in Wisconsin who was actually arrested, and we will talk about that. And the harassment, big time harassment going on against judges, even federal judges who are daring to rule against Der Fuhrer here. But Heidi, can you? This is a shocking. I mean, there's a reason we're leading with this story. This is an astonishing story. Can you tell us, Heidi, what has happened to you after having been elected in a regular, certified, public, a vote? What has happened to you in your town?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Harvey, for having me here and giving me a platform to share my story. It is a very unusual story. So I was elected as mayor of this small town with a council who was not openly excited about me being elected. So I knew that we were going to have conflict and that I was looking forward to working through that conflict together. But it changed courses. What happened was the city manager received formal complaints about his behavior, and I went to City Hall to receive those complaints. And I saw on each letter that it had already been scanned in. So I asked the city staff if they had scanned the letters into the council, and they told me no, that they had scanned the complaints in to the person that they were about, the city manager. And I was very confused by that. And so I asked a couple of questions and just tried to understand what was going on. And they told me to leave. So I left.
Wait. Let's get this clear. You have a city manager. Written complaints came into town hall about the city manager. The staff of who is the staff? Somebody scanned in the letters of complaint about the city manager. You, as mayor, went to your own city hall, inquired about these letters, and was told that the scanned letters only went to the city manager himself, and it is a he, and then pick it up again there.
And that if I had a problem with it, to take it up with him, but that I needed to leave. And so I left. And the next day, I received an email from the city manager stating that I had two formal complaints now against me, the mayor, from the city staff, seeing that I was intimidating, hostile, and aggressive when I asked for these letters. And so I asked for the footage, the security footage, and I was told that that day the videos weren't working. So I've managed teams of staff. I've done civil disobedience my whole life. So I didn't consider this to be aggressive, or I really thought that I was coming with curiosity. So on April 3rd, they held an executive session to
Who's
decide.
they? Who's they?
The city council, 6 members. I'm the seventh as the mayor. The 6 members held an executive session to decide if I and the city manager should have hearings on our complaints. And they decided I should have a hearing and that we were going to go directly into it. And they asked me if I wanted an open hearing or a closed hearing. And because I felt like this was becoming a witch hunt, I, of course, asked for an open hearing so the audio could be obtained by the public, which it is obtainable now, so you can all hear it for yourself. Long story short, they voted that I had violated the city charter, and in our city charter, it was 21G. It's an elections campaign rule that is to keep cronyism out of City Hall. The idea is that an individual can't direct city staff on how to conduct the campaign or elections. But they used that rule to vote me off, saying that I directed the staff by asking that the complaints be emailed to me.
So let's get this straight. There's a 7-person city council. You're the 7th member as mayor. The other 6 members of the city council decided to remove you as mayor. You had just been elected.
Yeah, less
And
than 3 months.
now, let me guess, what is the nature of these 6 members?
Well, I mean, they're all nonpartisan seats, but we can imagine what rural Oregon city councils are mostly made up of.
So they voted 6-1 to remove you?
Yeah, and one of the other things that was really interesting about this was one of the employees that put a complaint in about me, their daughter is a city councilor. And that person did not recuse themselves. They didn't say, you know what, I am definitely got a conflict of interest here. I'm going to withhold my vote. They used their vote improperly, unconstitutionally to remove me. The good news, Harvey, is that I have a really fantastic attorney who came right away to me, who is helping me right now because we are going to have me reinstated.
When you ran for mayor, what was the vote count?
Oh gosh, I see that there are folks from Waldport on here. I can't remember exactly, but I want to say I won by 71%. 70%.
71%.
Something in the 70s. Yeah, it was a large proportion. And the reason why I was voted in was because people want change. People see that it's the same counselors for over a decade. There's a lock in change here. We've met our ceiling of change, and that was one of the reasons why I ran. Was I believe wholeheartedly that democracy only works when we're involved.
I mean, I hope everybody understands how astonishing this. HEIDE here was elected by 71. When was the election?
It was November 3rd, November 5th, whenever I was on the ballot with Kamala.
And when did you take office?
I was sworn in January 9th. So I was in my seat for less than 3 months. I had 2 meetings. The March meeting, actually, the city manager canceled our March city council meeting in fear of topics that I was going to bring up. And really what that topic was I thought that the city needed an attorney. We have a city attorney, and I was asking that the city attorney be present for the city council meetings. And I was told that I was plotting against the city, which was it's just unbelievable. It's unimaginable.
The 6 members of the city council, were they elected last November?
No, the city council alternates. So like half the council goes this year, half will go next year. Every election, half the council reelects. But I have to tell you, my community is working very hard to recall the city council right now. But ironically, 3 of the city councilors cannot be recalled until they've been in office for 6 months. So again, I could not have even been recalled because they didn't give me the time to be on council.
When you ran for mayor last fall, did you have anybody running for city council that supported you?
No, I
Oh,
didn't.
see, okay, that's unbelievable. There is an instance, by the way. I'll put this out and see if anybody knows in the federal government where the chairman of a regulatory commission was thrown out allegedly because of abusive behavior to the staff when it was really a coup d'etat. Does anybody know offhand who that was? I do. I'm just throwing it out here. HEIDE, do you know? You'll love it.
No.
It was the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, what?
Jasko? Was that
Yasko,
what it was? Yeah.
Greg
Okay.
Yasko,
Huh?
was
Yasko.
dared to try to actually regulate the nuclear industry, which no chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had ever done before. And the nuclear industry wanted him gone. So they claimed, and you might use this in your legal citations, they claimed that he was abusive to the staff. And there was a whole hearing that was conducted by some of the most abusive legislators in American history, and they threw him out because, and Greg Yasko has since been very active on the nuclear issue, has written a book actually, but that's the last time I can recall, well, he was not an elected official. He had been a staffer for the senator from Nevada, Harry Reid, and but he dared question the nuclear industry, which God knows the Nuclear Regulatory Commission should never do, and they got rid of him. So you're not alone in this, Heidi. Or shall I call you Mayor Lambert? So are you like, what is your position now? Are you officially in limbo? What's the deal?
Well, so on April 10th, there was a regular city council meeting, and I had to go to that council meeting and use my public comment to state that I did not vacate my seat and I didn't recognize their expulsion. But when, like an hour before that city council meeting was to be held, they closed public comment and they said that then no one would be allowed to make public comment. So my attorney said I had to assert my seat. I had to somehow make it publicly recorded that I was there in attendance. So he said, if you feel safe enough, go sit at the dais, go take your seat. So when I
Did you
got
have
in,
supporters there?
I did. Luckily, I had probably 50 supporters come, and there was actually a young man who has his own YouTube channel who was videotaping, which I was so proud of, practicing his, freedom of speech. I think his channel is like Rebel with a Cause on YouTube. But so when I got there, they had removed my seat. So there was no seat at the table for me to take. And so I asked someone from the audience if they would give me their seat. And this kind woman got up and gave me her seat so I could drag it over and sit down there and declare, myself still mayor. And as soon as I did, they did a nod to the sheriff and asked for me to be arrested. And
Who is they? Who was conducting?
The city manager is who directed the sheriff to
How
arrest.
does he have the authority to run
And
the city council meeting?
I don't know how he has the authority he has. Honestly, he should be supervised and managed by the city council. And that is all that I've been trying to do. And it is such a great threat. They have exiled me, or at least are
You
trying to.
look like an extremely threatening person. Um, I mean, this is unreal. So this is a coup, obviously. The city manager took control of the city council, officiated this meeting, denied you a seat. Is that what happened?
Yeah, yeah, and it's all videotaped. You can watch it on YouTube. Just put in Mayor Waldport. You're gonna find a bunch of videos.
What was the meeting conducted in German?
No, but I have to tell you, Harvey, I've stood in front of trains. I have stopped, massive weaponry in ports leaving, the Tacoma ports for the Middle East. I have stood in great fear to be arrested, great fear for my own safety and well-being. Never did I think the first time I would be arrested would be sitting in my elected seat. It's just absurd to me.
And did you know the cop who arrested you?
Yeah, I did. It actually was the sheriff of our county. It was an elected official. It was a very uncomfortable position for him and I to be put in. But luckily, my day job is training trauma-informed practices to police officers. And they even asked me how they did when we got outside, and I gave them an A+.
That's great. This is going to make a great TV show someday. I mean,
Yeah.
really. I think who should we get to play you?
I don't know, but I hope it's a sitcom and not a drama because it's hilarious. It's hilarious. However, it's our democracy. So that part's not funny. Like that's the part that's not funny right now. I can laugh because I have the privilege to be able to laugh about this. But when you talk about judges or you talk about innocent people being kidnapped and taken to other countries, I mean, this all is ingrained in that we need our judicial system, we need our due processes, and we need to keep our democracy. And then that's why I'm in this game.
This is really, really amazing. Truly, I think Oprah should play you. That would be great casting. Lynn Feinerman, you've got a hand up, Lynn.
Yeah, I produce Women Rising Radio, Heidi, and I'd like to talk with you about doing something with us. I just wanted to say that I think this is, a lot of us don't realize that this is what's happening when they say the right is organized and they're taking over school boards, they're taking over town councils, etc. And the truth is that it's happening everywhere. My little small town in Marin County, they almost killed a Black shop owner. And it turned out that the entire police department in this little town were completely off their beads. The police chief ended up resigning. The guy who almost pulled his gun on the Black shop owner here was let go and probably pushed to some other job somewhere else. Another guy was fired because he was committing violence on his own child. And the fourth guy, there was a fourth guy who committed suicide in the locker room. Okay, we were dealing with this, and it was like everybody was in this kind of white denial, right? And so we had this meeting, and I raised my hand, and the interim police chief was there, and I raised my hand and I said, instead of hiring all new cops, why don't we think of hiring a mental health specialist who can help not just with the people on the street, but with the cops? And there was this total silence, and the interim police chief said, "No, Lynn."
Lynn,
and that was it.
Lynn, could you please provide the link to your excellent podcast?
Yeah, I will. But I mean, it's happening. My point is that this is, an illness happening right on the ground. It's not just the nut jobs in the White House, but it's, it's just about almost every small town.
100%, Lynn, 100%. The last thing they want is regular working people in office. They don't want people who can't be pushed around or people who are curious and have questions to have these seats, because city council meetings go really easy when there's no one there and no one listening. And so as soon as people start showing up and caring, it gets the job to be a little more complicated because you have to stand in your integrity. I just wanted to also validate you, Lynn. I'm in a little town called Waldport on the coast of Oregon. If you go 60 miles inland, there's another town called Corvallis. It's much larger. It's about 50,000 people. And there was a city councilor with the last name Ellis. And last year, they did the same thing to her. They removed her on the same charter rule that's been ruled unconstitutional. Now, her timing was perfect because what she did was she just got reelected. And that's what I keep telling myself. Like, if the courts go too slow, then sometimes we have to move faster than the courts. Now, in Ellis's case, even though she got reelected, they also the city lost their case. The city had to pay like $500,000. Ellis only sued for $1 because she had to sue for some amount to be able to sue. But it was clearly not about the money to this woman. It was about principle. And that's really where I'm at, too. This is about principle. We deserve to have these seats. We need to be in these seats. And they can't just remove us because they don't like our opinions or our values or what we think. Like, that's how democracy works, is we're all supposed to sit at the table and be civil with each other and find solutions, even though we come from very different places.
Well, when you run again, you need to run with 6 people for those seats. And do you know the people who voted? And you must know the people who voted against you, right?
So the thing about small town elections, Harvey, is very often seats aren't opposed. So
Right.
like most of my council didn't run opposed. Now for my seat as mayor, I did have one candidate who ran. To be fair, I ran against that candidate because that candidate was already a city councilor. And so they just assumed that they would be the next mayor. And I thought my town deserved a proper campaign. I think we deserve choices. And so that was why I ran, was just to really get some of these topics up and be able to give my community something to compare one another to. And I was a little surprised when I did win because she was like the popular vote. So, but again, she was more of the same. And I feel like my community was really looking for change. We wanted something new.
Did your opponent advocate putting tariffs on goods coming in from Portland?
No,
Uh,
but yeah, no, but I don't think they advocated really for much, to be fair.
really? Mike Hirsch, you want to jump in? You have a hand up, Mike?
Yeah,
Anybody else jump in? We're going to move on to Sharon Kyle and Dick Price and Bill Blum to talk about what's happening to judges around the country. But Mike Hirsch, did you want to say something here?
yeah. Thanks, Sluggo. And hi, Mayor Lambert. Mimi and I discussed your situation, and I was absolutely flabbergasted, if that's the appropriate word, by the heavy-handedness and the ruthlessness, and the scorn with which this city manager and his cohorts treated the voters. And this is not going to end up well for them. We know that. And so thank you so much for your courage and your good humor as you're approaching this, Monty Python sketch of small town lunacy. I just want to underscore that this is how anti-democratic, fascistic people have always operated. They love democracy, but only if they're winning. If they cheat and whatever and still lose, then democracy be damned. And this has gone on for decades and decades, since the John Birchers tried to take over PTA meetings and infuse nonpartisan, very basic small town parents and teachers getting together to help promote education. They infused it with witch hunts against people they disagreed with. They tried to impose far-right extremism in the schools. And you see that now by persisting with this over the decades, they now have Trump and many state governors and state legislators who adhere to this fascistic, anti-democratic point of view. I'm really sorry that you ran into it, but I think they're going to be even more sorry that they ran into you. So we're very happy to feature your efforts and your perseverance against this oppression. And this oppression will not stand, and we're right behind you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to invite those who do want to follow this story and invite this fight. There is a Facebook page that is called Justice for Waldport. It's not just about me, because there's a lot of injustice, as you can imagine, going on here. That's why I am part of it, but there's more to it. And so if you want to like the Facebook page, Justice for Waldport, we'd appreciate it, because we can use all the positive input and collaboration we can get.
Well, absolutely. And I hope you're going to recruit running mates for the next election. And, it's really mind-boggling. Also, in the second hour today, we're going to talk a lot about energy and specifically about a solar farm that's been proposed for Hanford. So you may want to stick with us or rejoin us after the top of the hour, since you're a Hanford native. Mimi, thank you for bringing Mayor Lambert here. You are really a ferocious and intimidating looking person, so I can understand how they would fear you in Waldport. But this is one of those, you can't make it up. I mean, if somebody wrote this story, they wouldn't believe it. Except we now have Bill Blum and Sharon Kyle and Dick Price to talk about what's happening to judges. And in fact, the FBI, which is now Trump's private Gestapo, has arrested a judge in Wisconsin for allegedly helping aliens escape from ICE. Dick and Sharon, do you want to unmute? And Bill Blum, who's a wonderful reporter over the years, do you want to jump in? And you've got a piece at laprogressive.com. And by the way, laprogressive.com, which is a very powerful voice based in LA, not far from Dodger Stadium. I should put on my Jackie Robinson jersey, actually, along with Bill Blum, who's been a reporter since the beginning of time. Do you want to talk to us about your coverage of what's going on with judges around the country? And then and add to more of it. And by the way, Dick, you get the prize today for best shirt. So I like that one. Very good. Okay, go ahead, Dick and Sharon and Bill Blum.
Okay, cool. I don't see Bill. I hope he's on, but
I saw him earlier, but maybe he's not with us anymore. I don't know.
that's
But go
fine.
ahead.
We can address this. So Bill Blum, who is a former judge, is also a contributor to many independent progressive outlets, including the LA Progressive, the digital magazine that Dick and I publish daily. We contacted Bill and asked him for some input when we heard that Judge Hanna Dugan, who is the Milwaukee, Wisconsin judge who was recently arrested. So we asked him if he would consider being interviewed. As a former judge, I really wanted him to weigh in. So he was interviewed, and we submitted a link to both his interview and then the piece that I wrote. So in the interview, Bill Blum talks about Judge Hanna Dugan. And I want to give you a little bit of background. For those of you who don't remember, this happened on April the 25th. The judge was arrested by the FBI. She was charged with 2 federal felonies. But a little bit of background on Judge Hanna Dugan. She is an extremely qualified and highly regarded judge. And when they arrested her in the courthouse where she presides in public. Highly unusual way of handling a judge for a controversial, I won't label it minor action, but for an action that could have easily been addressed by them having a discussion with. But no, they had to put her in handcuffs and take her in on April the 25th. And I've since learned that she has a very high-powered attorney that's representing her. So when we asked Bill Blum and honey, weigh in at any time. When we asked Bill Blum for the interview, he gave us an interview, and he's not here. You guys can go listen to the interview. I started doing some research on what's been happening with the judicial branch since the Trump administration. Both the second one and the first one have been online. Well, it turns out that the U.S. Marshal Service has alerted many judges and let them know that since the Trump administration has been on board, there has been a marked increase in unusually high threats to members of the judiciary branch due to something called doxing. Now, those of you that don't know what doxing is, and I don't mean to underestimate anyone because I didn't know what doxing was just a few months ago, but what doxing is when there is public disclosure of personal information, like their address. Generally, what happens is a person of high regard, and in some cases, people do consider Trump a person of high regard. They go online, usually on social media, on Truth Social perhaps, and they say disparaging things about someone. In this case, we're talking about a member of the judicial branch. And then after saying those disparaging things, then somehow that judge's home address just gets put out there. And that has been happening with several judges. I think you might remember Judge Tanya Chutkan, who was overseeing the case for Trump's alleged election interference. She had to be placed under a 24-hour protection. That's Judge Tanya Chutkan. You may remember Judge Gonzalo Curiel, who Trump called a Mexican as if this is something disparaging. The only problem is Judge Curiel is an American. He's not a Mexican, but he also experienced high levels of attacks. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson recently made a speech at the First Circuit Judicial Conference in Puerto Rico. And it's really highly unusual for Supreme Court Justice to come out and speak in ways that are challenging of a president. While she didn't mention Trump's name directly, she described the ongoing verbal assaults and non-compliance with court orders as deliberate efforts to intimidate judges and undermine the rule of law. She also highlighted the increasing threats of violence, professional retaliation faced by judges, including bomb threats and the publicizing of their private addresses. She and others, I'm assuming, in the Supreme Court are also experiencing this. So we've witnessed what's happened with the legislative branch. They've basically been neutered. Now we have the executive branch, which is, of course, is under the control of Trump. And the third branch, the judicial branch, is under high attack.
So let me say,
go ahead.
You said that Judge Hanna Dugan had a high-powered attorney that may defend her, and she may indeed free herself, and the other judges may defend themselves well. But number one, they're going to have to put forth all that energy and perhaps money and time to defend themselves. But second, the Trump administration is winning in all cases because their real intent is intimidation. They've intimidated the media. They're suing CBS and New York Times, and I hear they're coming after KPFK next. They've intimidated universities. They're taking away tax-exempt status and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're intimidating judges. Now, these judges with maybe high-powered names or lots of spine will be able to stand up to it. But you got to imagine that there are judges that are thinking, Jesus, do I want to put my life on hold because of Donald Trump? And indeed, they may not. And I am, of the two of us, I'm the guy that's always glass half full. And I like to see that resistance is mounting. People in the streets, some of these attorneys fighting, or these judges fighting back, some media outlets deciding not to go along. I mean, Trump intimidated the entire legal profession. High-powered, as you all know, high-powered legal firms said, "Oh, sure, we'll do $200 million of free work for him." Well, finally, some of them are saying, "Oh no, maybe we won't." I'm hoping that's true. I'm not sure it is true.
Right. So we talked about the three estates. The fourth estate is the media. We know it's coming. And this is a time when independent media and progressive media, we've got to find ways to link arms with each other, support each other, and uplift these stories, which is one of the reasons we've been talking to Harvey about the LA Progressive, coming on regularly, us sharing your content and doing whatever we can, because we've reached a point where we're right on the threshold of a constitutional crisis with the Trump administration disregarding the court's orders. So what can the Supreme Court do if they issue an order and Trump disregards it? Well, there's a few things, but let's face it, the Supreme Court doesn't have any power behind it. They can write these lofty documents. They can hold them in contempt. They can issue arrest warrants, but it's not the justices themselves that go out and arrest them. That has to come through the Department of Justice and also has to be coordinated with the executive branch, and who's in charge? Donald Trump. They can seek enforcement via the DOJ and the U.S. Marshals. Now, the judicial branch has access to U.S. Marshals, but again, not without going through the executive branch. So they're basically, they have no might, they have no power. So,
but let me say, I mean, I think everybody here thinks Donald Trump at best is a incompetent buffoon, if not a whole lot worse. But the people behind him, the people that wrote that long document, they have designed a superb plan. As much as we may hate it, they are running a television show, I've heard. Every day at the top of any newspaper you look, there's not one story about Donald Trump and his misbehavior, but 5 or 6. The whole paper, the whole discussion, everything on MSNBC and CNN is all about Donald Trump 24/7, edging out anything else that can happen. So I think we can laugh or cry or curse at Donald Trump, but it's those people behind him that know what they're doing.
So Mila has a question.
Well, let me point out very quickly, and then we'll go to Mila and then Dave Saltman. There is an instance, of course, a very famous instance in U.S. history where in the 1830, the Congress passed a bill which under the auspices of Andrew Jackson, who's one of Donald Trump's heroes, to remove the Cherokee, the 5 civilized tribes, so-called, from the Southeast. And the decision came back from written by John Marshall, who had been the Chief Justice since for about 25 years already. And he basically said that it was unconstitutional for the federal government to force the 5 tribes to move to Oklahoma. And Andrew Jackson famously replied that the Chief Justice, the court has made their decision, now let them enforce it. Now, ironically, it was actually not Andrew Jackson who moved the tribes. It was his vice president who became president, Martin Van Buren, who in 1838 sent the federal troops into the reservations and forced the 5 tribes, most importantly, most numerically, the Cherokee, to march to Oklahoma. So there is an instance of a president successfully, in those terms, defying the Supreme Court. I want to point out also that Andrew Jackson is given credit by many pro-democracy people for breaking up the Bank of the United States, which was formed by Alexander Hamilton, and which was supposed to be this big oligarchic thing. In fact, when Andrew Jackson broke up the Bank of the United States, he personally handed charters of banks to his buddies. The same as Trump is enriching Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and these other guys, these other tech moguls, with access to the federal government. When Andrew Jackson broke up the U.S. Bank, he enriched his friends, and he also personally profited from removing the Cherokee. Because his personal estate was in the vicinity of the Cherokee land, and he actually took land from the Cherokee when they were forced out, just keeping it consistent with the personal profiteering of Donald Trump in the White House. So just to complete that, thank you, Dick and Sharon. Stay with us, please. Myla Reeson and then Dave Saltman. Myla?
Oh, Dick and Sharon, I'm just so happy to see both of you here and I look forward to working with you. I have to say, I listened to that interview with Bill Blum, and it was so informative. It was just amazing, and he's fantastic. So I appreciate the fact that you now have this audio and video option on your website, because I was able to wash dishes and do some housework while I listened to this fabulous article. So I just want to recommend to everyone. Of course, your recap, both you and Dick did a fabulous recap of the conversation, but it's still so worthwhile. I highly recommend it. In fact, I'm going to listen to it again because it was just so full. So
do we have the link posted, Myla, or Steve?
Actually, Steve just put it in the chat again. I put it earlier. Steve put it, so it's right up at the top now, or at the bottom, as it were. So people.
So Myla, you might be interested. We started putting in a SoundCloud audio of the articles themselves, because we're hoping to get some people under 60 reading our articles.
And I want
age or IQ.
I see that Dave Saltman has his hand up, and after Dave speaks, I wanted to ping back on a couple of things that you said, Harvey.
Okay. And by the way, call me Sluggo, okay?
I'm sorry, Sluggo.
No, it's okay. But I will explain to the general listenership here that when I first moved to Los Angeles, I used my birth name, Harvey Wasserman, which I refer to as my slave name. And people kept saying, Harvey Weinstein, I thought you were in prison. So I now use Sluggo just to keep things clear. Okay. My buddy Dave Saltman, Salty, go ahead. Just for your information, Dick and Sharon and everybody, Dave Saltman is an Emmy-winning documentary guy and been in broadcast TV since the previous century. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'm Harvey. I have great respect. I knew Sluggo before he was Sluggo, so unfortunately, I've always called him Harvey. I can't get out of the habit. I'm
All
really
right, go
sorry.
ahead.
You
Okay.
are Sluggo is a perfect nickname for you. He's a hell of a baseball player.
Well, I was, but
Tennis,
thank you for that.
that's where the name comes from. Anyway, I'm very dismayed to hear that there is a precedent in American history for the president to make his buddies rich. You know, Donald Trump, not only is he getting them in on real estate deals, he set up his own coinage. I mean, this is beyond outrageous. This is, I don't know, I don't have a bad enough word in the lexicon. Criminal is way too small of a word for what it is. Anyway, and now you've got Donald Trump publicly coming out against, or at least not real sure about, due process, the linchpin of the legal system. Now, I'm here to say, and I know not everyone's going to agree with this, I'm here to say that there are only two things that make a government of laws as opposed to a fascist government. There's only two elements. One of them is respect for the law. If everybody has respect for the law, you don't really have a problem because nobody wants to break the law. Everybody's like my old friend Jerry Andrews, who wouldn't even cross against a red light because it was against the law. That's all you needed to know. And the second element is, as you pointed out, enforcement. If the law can't be enforced, then what good is it? Now, here's my question. I come from an old Union family. And back in the days, when the Second Amendment was a left-wing thing, not a right-wing thing, when the unions were having their meetings, they would point out, they would say, remember the Second Amendment applies to you. You know, in other words, come packing because the scabs are going to be out there. Now, I know that you're all nonviolent and so on. And for the record, I used to be, but we have to think about this. This is really, and I only disagree with one thing you said, Dick and Sharon. I don't know you, but you guys are obviously brilliant, and I love you already. We're more than just on the verge of a constitutional crisis. We're over the edge, even quite a bit, because if the judges can't enforce the law, what's the point? So I put it to you, and I do want to say there is, and then I'm going to stop. There is a case within our lifetime where this Second Amendment issue came up. And I'm referring to the famous, and I'm not necessarily advocating this, there's a lot of elements involved in this, but you probably all saw the picture, I think it would have been in 1968 or so, of the Black Panthers standing on the steps of the San Francisco City Hall with carbines in their hands, a whole line of them. And they had really good ones too. They had like M4s. They weren't messing around, and they were, and the courts basically said you have the right to self-defense. And I would argue that if we were making a legal argument about this, the Ninth Amendment, the one that nobody ever talks about, the Ninth Amendment is the one that protects us. I rest my case.
Well, thank you,
David.
Thank you, Counselor.
So, David, I would say that the one flaw in your argument about the Second Amendment is we may have carbines and we may have really good ones, but they've got drones and aircraft carriers and tanks and divisions of soldiers. We might lose that argument.
Well, I'd love to hear a better one.
Okay, so if I may, I see that Dennis Bernstein has his hands up, but I just wanted to touch on a couple of points that Harvey made before we lose the thread. And Harvey talked about President Andrew Jackson disregarding the Supreme Court and really launching the Trail of Tears, and then Vice President Van Buren picked it up. What I wanted to say and bring that to the current time is you'll notice that it is the most marginalized people, like what's happening with the people who are undocumented immigrants in this country today. The most marginalized people are attacked. And that happened back during Andrew Jackson and Martin Van Buren's period, because the stage is already set that these people, it's okay for us to do this to these people, and the rest of the country won't really get too upset. They won't be marching in the streets. For example, when George Floyd was murdered, I was completely shocked that the nation and the world even came out into the streets, because there were George Floyd's murdered every day. This happens all the time. That wasn't just an anomaly. So for some reason, it could have been a combination of COVID and people just tired of being in the house. But for some reason, we had this magical moment, and we used that energy to try to enact the George Floyd legislation, which failed. That you didn't see people out in the streets saying, oh my gosh, we've got to do something about that. So the number one thing they do is they begin their attack on marginalized people, then it spreads to the rest. And then the other point that I wanted to bring up is that don't forget that Trump has presidential immunity. The Supreme Court granted him presidential immunity. So not only are the courts somewhat hampered in their ability to confront Trump and what he's doing, but they put themselves in this position where it's even more complicated if we're going to deal with a constitutional crisis with a president who can basically just do anything.
Thank you for that. And of course, we remember the quote from Richard Nixon: if the president does it, it has to be legal. Dennis Bernstein, you had your hand up. Do you know Dick and Sharon? You guys work together. Dennis is the host of the Flashpoints show, which is nationally syndicated. Dennis, go ahead. Dennis Bernstein.
Hello, everybody. And thank you for this gathering. Incredible information. I've been dealing all morning with the threats to expand Alcatraz and turn it back into a major holding cell and deportation center for the United States. It's a terrifying prospect. I know people and have worked with people their whole life, worked their whole adult lives to free, if you will, to free the prison and to celebrate that freedom. And obviously, Trump would go after that situation. There is their beautiful island. And many of you, I'm sure, have joined us for sunrise visits to the island to liberate it. I just bring it up because it is deep, and people aren't using the word. Most people aren't using the word fascism yet, but I think we need to start using the word fascism, because that is exactly what the president of the United States has in mind for the United States. And they've got extraordinary resources like never before, if you will, to implement the kinds of programs they're thinking about. So these are terrible times, but it is an extraordinary opportunity to be with people. And I think one of our major responsibilities now is to link arms, as somebody said in this dialogue already. We need to combine our forces. Information is power, and there are a lot of uninformed people in the country who are waiting to learn more. It is inspirational to see what's been happening with the Bernie tour. And that's a nice beginning.
Well, we're going to talk more about the Bernie tour. And Dennis, with your powerful radio show, we want you, of course, we're trying to link arms with Dick and Sharon with freepress.org and laprogressive.com. And your radio show would be great. And of course, we're making strides at Pacifica in general, thanks to Myla Reese and among others, and Dr. Nancy on the board of KPFK. So this is a big linking of arms to be sure. There are people who are bringing out, this is something that Trump just threw out there. There are people who are bringing up the slight logistical problems, like plumbing, leaky roofs, no heat. I mean, it's a complete nonsense. It's the kind of thing that a guy like Trump would throw out and just for the heck of it. And now we have to talk about him again, and his latest brilliant idea. But I guess once he's Pope, he'll be able to get sanctification for Alcatraz. Mike Hersh, did you want to jump in here? And we're going to continue with this. This is a great dialogue. Wonderful people to have you all together here. 64 of us. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, Sluggo, I think that maybe what we should do is call it the Western White House and let Trump move into Alcatraz.
That's a great idea. I love that, Dennis. You should use that.
and it's a built-in sequel to the Birdman of Alcatraz. We could call it the Bird Brain of Alcatraz.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it did have such illustrious leaders as Al Capone and these three guys who apparently there were three guys who escaped. We also have to point out, by the way, thank you, Steve, for this visual tour of Alcatraz. We want to thank Donald Trump. He has now successfully helped to elect two leftist candidates, and one in Canada, and now again, I guess, imminently in Australia. I mean, it's very clear that the guy in Canada, Mark, I can't remember his last name, Carney, Mark Carney, was going to not win in Canada. And when Trump started talking about taking him over as the 51st state, he just won in a landslide.
Hey, Sluggo, real quick, the mayor has to leave, so if she can give us any last thoughts, that'd be great.
Mayor, did you want to jump in with any? Maybe Donald Trump will get you reelected. What do you think?
I don't think so. But I hope to be able to keep my seat longer than him, that's for sure. I just want to thank you all so much. I just have to tell you that it is the power of the people that keep people like me in my seat.
Well, put your contacts in there. We will have you back. Dick and Sharon are, and Dennis may have you on. But
I'll be in touch. I'll be in touch.
Please.
Excellent.
But Mayor, I strongly suggest you get 6 candidates or 3 at least to run with you for city council and serve these guys right, or these people right, to have a takeover of the city council, and we'll turn Waldport into Berkeley North. How's that?
And Sluggo, we've discussed recalling these miscreants and replacing them with actual good faith people. So stay tuned.
Well, they elected you by 70%, Mayor. So, what the heck? All you got to do is repeal those tariffs and you'll be right in there. So
I'll just keep rerunning. I'm just going to keep rerunning. They're just not going to be able to. First off, they're not allowed to remove me. But second of all, the people will keep voting me in. So.
Well, you've gotten a lot of national coverage. I mean, it's not like this happened in the dark here. They tried to keep it dark, but no. And, Steve Bannon has always said that the battle is not over Congress, it's over the media. And, with Dick and Sharon and with Steve at LA Progressive and Steve at freepress.org, with Bob Petrakis and Pete Johnson, I mean, and our going out on YouTube and the battle over Pacifica, this is all very important. So linking these together, please come back with us when you have time to talk about what's happening in Hanford. And, you know that your hometown is about to become one of the biggest solar farms in the world. So we want to talk about that going forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I just want to just hope that my story encourages you all to participate in your local government instead of being intimidated by it. And I just want to say real quickly that I would have no footage. There would be no evidence whatsoever if it wasn't for the people coming with their cell phones and recording the madness themselves. And so I just need to reinstate, like, if you have nothing else to do, like, go with your phones and observe what's happening in our community and share it, and maybe email it to Sluggo, and he'll share it. But that's what it takes. Is we are the media. We're the media now, and if we want our truths to be told, we have to tell it. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We'll have you back, and when you come back, bring at least 3 people that are going to run for city council when you run again. Okay.
I will, because you'd be surprised. There are people lining up to do it.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, once the bullies are gone, I think more people will want to participate.
If I lived in Waldport, I'd run for city council. The last time I ran for office was at the University of Michigan in 1966, and thank God I lost. So there you go. All right, guys. Thank you.
I'll catch you all later. Thank you.
Okay, Dick and Sharon, do you want to jump back in with more? And Mike, we had someone who was going to talk about a victorious fight against.
We do.
Are they with us?
Yeah, we've got Diane Cameron.
Oh, Diane Cameron. Okay, you're great. Dick and Sharon, I don't know if you have to run or not. Is there more you want to throw in?
No, we do have to go. I'm just dealing with my next thing on my phone here. So we do have to run.
Since you live near Dodger Stadium, next time I'm going to wear my my shirt from Jackie Robinson Day. I brought my grandsons and my daughter to Jackie Robinson Day, and you are nearby, And one of my ambitions, as I've told you, is to have the parking lot at the stadium, Dodger Stadium, completely covered with solar panels. So
Sounds
since
good.
you're local, we need to deal with that. LAProgressive.com could lead the charge on that. And the key person to get to on that will be Magic Johnson, who's a co-owner of the Dodgers. So let's work on that.
All right.
Great to have you with us.
For listening, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Good
Thank
talking
you.
to you.
And great to link you up with Dennis Bernstein and Steve Caruso. So we're building a media anti-empire here.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, you guys, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Come
Thank
back
you.
anytime, Sharon and Dick. Love
We
you.
will.
Take care. Okay, Steve, and then we're going to go to Diane Cameron. We're moving into our environmental hour now, and Diane has led a successful fight against the highway. We want to talk about that and what else is happening. Then we're going to be joined by Lee Felsenstein to talk about network building. Steve, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, we do have with us Jay Warmke to talk about Harvey Solar. So I
Yeah,
think
that's
or
great.
solar. He's a very astute educator in the solar business and keeps his fingers on the pulse of the solar business. So if there's anybody we need to hear from, is Jay. So
Okay, well, let's go. Let's start
before-
with Diane, who's invited, and then we'll go to Jay. We still have 60 people with us after an hour. We are a Zoom call with the longest attention span. Jay is with us, but Diane Cameron, my understanding from Mike Hersh. Well, Mike, will you introduce Diane, please?
Absolutely. My good friend Diane Cameron has been an inspiration to me. She's a tireless, highly intelligent, persistent local activist who some have likened to a bomb thrower because she's so relentless in her defense of the environment and democracy and basic human rights. But she's anything
That would
but.
be that. Since we're nonviolent, that would be BALM, right?
Well, I'm just saying she's the bomb.
Okay.
So, yeah, she's 100% peaceful, but very effective in every possible way. And I'm so proud to have Diane with us and to call her my friend.
Okay, Diane. So you have won a victory that Mike has mentioned. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sluggo and Mike. And my co-leader, Margaret Shope, is also with me here on this Zoom. And we are in Montgomery County, Maryland, with the TAME Coalition, which stands for Transit Alternatives to Mid-County Highway Extended. And we just won a victory with our planning board that voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend removal of this destructive proposed highway called Mid-County Highway Extended, or M83. They're recommending that it be removed from our master plan, and that's how you legally kill a proposed highway project. You've got to remove it from the master plan because that's its legal basis. And so that's us clearing the first of two hurdles we need to clear in order to completely cancel and kill this project dead so that it can't come back like a vampire from the grave. So the second hurdle is now in front of us. Hi, Margaret. See you there. The second hurdle that we now face is with our 11-member county council, who are the deciders on whether to protect this fossil fuel highway project by keeping it in the master plan or whether to remove it from the master plan as recommended to them by their own planning board. And so this is one way to think of this as you all are environmental and democracy activists nationwide, is that this is how we turn our country around for climate resilience, is we've got to stop expanding the fossil fuel system. And one way that it expands itself is by paving new highways. So we've got to go into our master plans and take the proposed highways out. We will be saving 5 public parks and over 200 acres of forest from destruction. When our county council, as we are asking and demanding later this summer that our county council vote to remove this M83 highway from the master plan. And we also want to thank the Sierra Club, who at our local county level, the Sierra Club is stepping up and as our political partner, and they're going on hikes with us. They're meeting with council members alongside us, which was really helpful. And Margaret, do you want to add anything?
We have started working with local high school students in the that take AP courses, but are also in the international baccalaureate programs here. Diane has pushed us to do that for 5 years, but in the meantime, we took a year to do all of our 13 films and had to do some other reports. But we are now working with them. They are with organizations called MOCO from Montgomery County, MOCO Eco, and MOCO Wild. And we are getting them in front of the county council because they are our next generation of TAME. We hope we don't even have a TAME after this year. But the point is, when council members see the next generation in front of them speaking, that has a lot more power for them to face what it is that their campaigns say they will do to help preserve the climate, but that their votes do not say the same thing. And we are looking forward to that in the next couple months.
Sounds like Gavin Newsom to me, but who voted to transition California to renewables, and then 4 years later stabbed us in the back. So, and where exactly are you located, you guys?
We are the immediate suburb immediately north of Washington, D.C. in Maryland,
Okay.
Montgomery County, Maryland. And also I wanted to thank you, Sluggo, for helping me start on my activist journey with a Muse grant in 1980. I was with Indiana Public Interest Research Group, and I got a $1,000 grant from the No Nukes concerts to educate people about solar energy and why we needed to cancel the devastating Marble Hill nuclear power plant. So I'm still working today to cancel a destructive project, thanks to you, Sluggo.
Well, it wasn't me. It was, just a whole bunch of us. But God, that's really great to hear. You will be glad to know, by the way, I don't know if you're a basketball fan, but I once met Larry Bird in the locker room in Richmond Coliseum in Cleveland, and we had a 20-minute talk about Marble Hill. And he said he had a bunch of guys, friends of his, who worked there. He was very cool about it. So there you go. But
Wow.
Thank you for that.
Wow.
Thank you. Very cool. Steve Caruso, and then that's great here. Anybody else want to jump in? We hope you win and keep us posted. We'll keep having you back here. Steve?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about this brochure I found on the website. You can see it here if you want to. I mean, that's the thing. I can put the link in the chat so people can have it. But we had a major highway come through from Columbus out east into Licking County. It has 6 lanes worth of land, if not 8. And they only did 2 on each side. And I'm thinking, well, dang, they could put urban transport in the middle there, rails or whatever. They never did that. They expanded it. It got thicker. Now they have the Intel plant going in. But, Microsoft backed out of Licking County. They're not doing their projects now because of, which is probably a good thing, because everywhere you turn, they're mowing down trees and forests, and it's just getting too urbanized. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, before I moved where I am, the previous owner said, oh, it's getting too urban out here. We're going to move out into the country. And I'm like, dang, man. But I live downtown Columbus. It was a whole different story. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Hersh, go ahead, Mike.
Yes, thank you so much, Sluggo, and thank you, Margaret and Diane. Here in Maryland, we've been struggling to fully implement long ago approved mass transit programs. And a lot of the money that should have gone to that has been soaked up by these unnecessary destructive highway projects. Like there's this inter-county connector that was built, a toll road that was designed mainly to enrich a certain cadre of developers. I want you to comment on the efficacy of public transport versus these huge, wasteful, asphalt paved disasters.
Diane?
Yeah, I see Marion Eady is here. I also want to thank Marion for helping us to get the local Sierra Club with us in this campaign to cancel the proposed M83 highway. So Mike, to answer your question about public transit, Montgomery County, Maryland has several excellent transit systems that serve our county, including a significant part of the greater DC metro, subway and rail system is here. We also have an excellent bus system that is a county bus system called Ride On. And we also have the state operated train system, the MARC train. And we are promoting, Tame Coalition promoting and has been asking for years for the expansion of these transit systems. And we also have our county council right now is preparing a new budget that will include fare-free riding on our bus system. And we support this. This is going to help more people to ride the bus. And it turns out that there is a very interesting math of highways where basically when you take a congested highway and if you start having a small percentage of people who now drive on that highway as a small percentage with a small percentage increase of people using transit, that highway then starts to flow much better. In other words, congestion is relieved by people switching to transit much more easily, more readily than you might believe. And it has to do with how, like fluid dynamics, how traffic flows through a bottlenecked highway. So there is a lot of optimism that I think we need to express publicly about transit and not trash talk it. And some of our friends, I think, are too used to trash talking and saying things like, transit is going downhill, we should just all drive. And I've had friends say that, and I think they really need to rethink that and realize that that transit is how we live in cities, but still keep our farms and our forests next to us, serving the city. That's how we do it with transit, not by blanketing everything with more pavement or highway.
Well, very well stated. Beautiful. Marion Eady, you want to jump in on this? Marion, you've been part of all this?
Yeah. First of all, in the interest of accuracy, I want to say that I'm pretty sure the local Sierra Club would have backed Diane all the way, even if I hadn't brought this to. I encountered very, very little resistance. I should say I encountered enthusiasm for the Sierra Club to get into this fight.
Well, who could ever stand up against the great Marion Eady?
Oh, well, pshaw. I mean, there are several people on my local group who have no problem doing that at all.
Okay.
I just put my email address in the chat. This is not a beginning of a long conversation. I think Zoom is probably going to be over soon. But one of the biggest threats to our forests in the suburban areas in Montgomery County is the destruction of stream valleys. We have a program which subsidizes at taxpayers' expense, basically, to come in with bulldozers and completely denude stream valleys, dig them up and reconfigure them, and call this a win for the environment. And we have a big problem with invasive species in Maryland. And when you turn the stream valley into the surface of the moon, what rushes in to fill the void are invasives. So this is a very, very difficult issue with many environmental groups, I think, actually, if not on the wrong side, at least having problematic ideas about it and having conflicts of interest. And it's a long-term fight. But I put my email address in the chat. I'm just collecting the names of people who would be interested when we figure out what our ask is going to be to try to begin to reform this system. That's all.
Yeah, and actually, do we have a few more minutes? Because
go ahead and I want to point out that Marion was a co-founder of the League of Conservation Voters, which was one of the most continues to be one of the most important environmental groups in the country. So thank you for that, Marion. Go ahead, Diane, and then we'll get to Jay Warmke from Ohio and Ron Leonard, who's got a more global view of the energy situation. Then we're going to go to Lee Felsenstein, talk about following up on all these great rallies that Bernie and AOC and others are conducting. So go ahead, Diane, continue, please.
One of the links between what Marion is describing and the campaign that Margaret and I and Marion are working on to cancel the M83 highway is that it's something called mitigation, where the highway engineers and the highway lobby has gotten in bed with a lot of environmental engineering firms, and some part of the larger environmental movement has bought into the concept that it's okay to build destructive highway projects because we can mitigate their, meaning, I guess, lessen or make up for the destruction they do with positive, what they claim to be positive environmental projects in other places. And so the so-called stream restorations that Marion is campaigning to stop really very often are destroying stream valleys, as Marion pointed out. And they're doing this with mitigation dollars from highway projects. And so it's these things are tied together, and it's ironic that our environmental laws are being misused to actually end up with funding to have the destruction of a highway project be compounded with destroying other streams and other locations under the guise of mitigating quote unquote restoration.
Well, that's pretty mind-boggling. Thank you for that. If Margaret or Marion or anybody, if you want to join in on that, we'll wrap that part up. We'll go to James Warmke and then to Lee Felsenstein. Myla, go ahead. Oh, and then Alex.
Oh, okay. There used to be the most beautiful two-lane highway that ran from Santa Fe, New Mexico, down south to near Carlsbad. It was Highway 285. And it was just a glorious highway. And it was turned into a major 4-lane, 6-lane with, it was just completely modernized. And now plutonium contaminated nuclear weapons waste from all over the United States from different facilities take this travel down what used to be a really beautiful highway. So when you started talking about this, Diane, it just brought back the memories of missing that beautiful road. And you just wonder what else they're going to be transporting if they change your road. They might be transporting chemicals, you name it. But there are a lot of hazardous materials that they put on the highways, and once they say improve it, it's just I really admire the fact that you're fighting this. So I just wanted to put in my gratitude, and unfortunately, it just brought back a nightmarish memory from New Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Myla. Alex Williams, and then we're going to go to Jay Warmke. Alex?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like a godsend. I knew nothing about this. And I like I put in the chat, I live in Rockville. And I didn't even know about it. And I also wanted to say that about the highway thing. I think that's a lesson, because I'm originally from New York, and I think that's a lesson we should have learned from Robert Moses. I mean, back in the day. I mean, when he finally got out, they stopped building, Cross Bronx and all that stuff. But what they came up with is, if you really want to improve traffic, and I've seen it in New York, don't build no more highways. Because, expand the mass transit, because, like I think Diane said, it just, when you build a highway, you just crowd another highway, and then you need another and another. And that brings me back to could they expand the purple line? Or this has been my thing for the long since I've been living here, it's almost 20 years. Why don't they ever think about building a metro around the Beltway? I mean, a train rather than, I mean, you already got the right of way. This is just a suggestion. And it would cut down on, you wouldn't need another 270, you know what I'm saying?
We have
I've heard that proposal before, Alex, about to locate a transit system along with the Beltway, and I think it's interesting, and I think maybe through I've heard County Executive Mark Elrich talk about having more buses and bus lanes on the Beltway and on Interstate 270. And in terms of expanding the metro line, there is a proposal that's been on the table for some years now to expand the metro subway light rail system, the Red Line, to expand it north. Right now it ends in the city of Gaithersburg at Shady Grove or Rockville, and
Right.
the concept is to expand that metro subway system, expand it north into towards Germantown and Clarksburg. And I don't see why it couldn't be expanded up to all the way to Frederick County, because a very large portion of the traffic on our interstate highways in Montgomery County is from our neighbors to the north. So having more transit for them, to commute to their jobs in DC really makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Very interesting. And I mean, Alex, you should obviously exchange contacts with Diane and Margaret and join the fight here. Okay.
Yep.
Sluggo, a couple things real quick. Margaret wanted to get in there, and then I'd like to bring Diane, Margaret, and their allies and Marion back with U.S. PERG soon to talk about this on a national level.
Well, okay, let's do that. Lee Felsenstein, are you good for a while? Can we come to you in a while? I got unmute you, Lee. We want to talk about expanding the. There we go. Lee, are you good for a while? Can you can you hang with us? Okay, good.
Hang out.
And Jay, are you good also to talk about solar in Ohio? We can't resist having Jay on because they're about to build a solar farm in Ohio. It's going to be called the Harvey Solar Farm, and I want to see if Jay can get him to change the name to the Sluggo Solar Farm, but that's another issue. Okay, let's do this then, Marion, and then you want to bring in National PERG, Mike, and then we'll go to Jay.
Well, Margaret, I think was starting to say something.
Go ahead, Margaret.
In 2022, U.S. PERG, we had been working with them, but many times we just kept emailing them. And they emailed back and they said, you know what, we're going to take your road and have it be one of the worst highway boondoggles in the country. And we were one of 7, I believe. And you can find us on their website. So Maryland picked it up too, Maryland PERG. What I also want to tell you is that another grassroots in Montgomery County, like us, and I just got the Purple Line, which is a light rail, restart.
Okay, you got to remember this is a national call, so we want to, just kind of be a little less, okay.
Got it. But the bottom line is grassroots, as you all have talked before we got on, is more powerful than legislators believe, and that is what we have found out. And we are grateful to be on that level. And we are grateful for groups like this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we got you a recruit here. Alex is obviously going to turn the tide here with you guys. Mike, is there anything else we wanted to jump in with?
Just that we're going to continue. And this victory here in Montgomery County, Maryland, can be duplicated all around the United States of America. As Margaret said so aptly, the grassroots can be heard from. We can rise up and take care of business. And just like we're going to put the mayor back in her seat and get rid of the people who tried to kick her out, The grassroots is powerful, and we are going to be heard from. Trump is going to fear us. He's not going to get away with what he's doing because the grassroots is the strongest force in U.S. politics.
Well, that's what we're about. We appreciate that. Lee Felsenstein later is going to tell us how to work with us on expanding the reach of these incredible marches that are happening. You know, I mean, after the George Floyd thing, there were huge marches, and there are huge marches today, but they're much lower key in terms of the national impact. So let's come to that after we talk with Jay Warmke about solar in Ohio. Go ahead, Jay, please. This is Harvey Solar here. But go ahead, Jay, please.
Yeah, I think you just like the name. So,
of course.
Anyway, I guess this is, to me, a development similar to a lot of them that we've seen here in Ohio, but not just Ohio. I know across the Midwest and increasingly in more rural, red state areas. And I know this is a national group that you've got here, so I don't want to just focus on Ohio. But what you've seen is there's conflicts that are going to come into play here as the whole solar industry then moves into these more rural environments. In the state of Ohio, they passed a law that said that township trustees can essentially veto wind and solar project. Well, township trustees are not always the most educated or unbiased group of folks. So what you've seen there is that oftentimes you'll get a big developer come into a region, you get opposition forces developing that are supposedly grassroots, although there is a lot of evidence that much of this is being directed by lobbying firms, actually with ties back to Karl Rove, of all people, that is the no solar on prime farmland kind of thing. So anyway, this is one of many developments here that have initially vetoed by township trustees, then they get appealed up through the Public Utilities Commission, and then ultimately this one went to the Ohio Supreme Court. So the perspective on it is one depending on where you're coming from. I think the knee-jerk reaction of the Republican infrastructure that we see here is to be against solar. The problem is many of the people who are benefiting financially from these projects are the Republican infrastructure constituency. So they're kind of in conflict with each other. And it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic play out. One of the reasons Ohio is such a hotbed at the moment of solar development is because of the regional transmission authorities. Our electricity can service Chicago and New York City. So if you're wanting to put in a solar development and sell that power to those metropolitan areas, go to Ohio, go to Indiana, go to Pennsylvania, go to these rural areas where land is cheap. Then, of course, you get into the conflict of this is a development on what is typically agrarian land. And a lot of people want to resist that. They basically say we should keep farms farming. The problem is farms are no longer agrarian, they're industrial. In fact, about 40% of all the corn grown in the United States goes towards energy. It's for ethanol. And solar is about...
Are you sure that's a huge number? 40%?
Yeah, 40. It's 38%. 40% of all of the corn goes towards fuel. So we're not growing food, we're growing fuel. And solar is 35 times more efficient in producing energy. So we're not talking about the need of a lot of farmland here. In fact, there was a study by the Oregon State University that said if you just take 1% of the farmland, you can produce enough energy to service 20% of the nation's need. So that said, we're not, again, talking a lot of farmland here. But I would also argue that farms should not be your first choice when it comes to creating solar development. We have a lot of marginalized land that should be first choice, but farming is very, very attractive to the solar developers because it's flat, it's often near access points, and it's often near transmission stations. So it's the low-hanging fruit. And unless somebody disincentivizes by either providing some carrots for developing, say, marginalized strip mining land or shopping malls or whatever, whatever's been abandoned airports, abandoned gray sites, or brownfields, all of that. Now, for the farmers, it's very attractive because, and I looked up this statistic here for this talk or this discussion, but a farmer will make anywhere between $9 and $190 per acre when they're growing corn. The average that they'll be paid for a solar farm is up around $2,000 an acre every year for a 20-year lease. So the farmers are certainly incentive. And I think a lot of folks maybe are misconstrue that there is an opposition to solar in rural America, because there may be an opposition by the elected leaders. But interestingly, there was just another poll by a conservative organization in Texas found 91% of Texans feel that farmers should have the right to put solar and wind on their own land and sell that power to whoever they want. This is a land rights issue as far as they're concerned. They may not love solar and wind, but by God, you better not tell me what I can do with my land. And so it is legislative overreach when these state legislatures come in and say you should not be developing in solar.
Well, there is, of course, a development, which I'm sure you're well aware, which is agrivoltaics.
Sure.
Because if you put the solar panels up in the air, 6 feet or so, on carports or whatever, you can grow crops underneath the solar panels, shade crops, and you can certainly graze animals.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the animals can scratch their backs like buffaloes do on the supports of the solar panels. But the agrivoltaics has become a very big deal. So you don't lose the farmland.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be raised up. These panels can be rotating, tracking systems, and you just put them to vertical, space them large enough, and you can run your turbines and you can run all of this other equipment between them, and then just lay them out and have them track. There's also photovoltaics, which is another issue of putting solar on reservoirs. And
well, that should be done anyway because that cuts evaporation.
Sure. And I know that the reservoirs or the canals in California are a great area for this. There's lots of space. There's lots of space for solar.
Well, I want to point out also, Jay, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
but
fine.
I have personal experience with wind power in Ohio, which really translates everywhere. You know that the majority of electricity, over 50% of the electricity in Iowa, is now generated by wind.
Sure.
Which has been owned by Warren Buffett of all people. But in the mid 2010s, I was in the wind business, and I went to farms in northern Ohio, sort of the north coast area, 50 miles down from Lake Erie, and you could power the entire state of Ohio with windmills in that 50-mile north coast region. And we were about to do that. It made incredibly great economic sense. All the farmers wanted. You can get $7,000 a year by leasing a windmill on your land. And the Ohio legislature stepped in with a single sentence in the Ohio code for a big setback, which is complete nonsense. And they killed $4 billion worth of wind development in northern Ohio on land, which could have powered the entire state. Now, my view of this kind of thing is, okay, you guys are going to fight us, like Trump is now trying to cancel wind development. But the bottom line is, and I hate to use the word inevitable, but it's true, because the one great thing that's happening in our world is the relentless progress of wind and solar in getting cheaper and cheaper.
Sure.
So
well, I think you'll see that in the last decade, wind and solar have dominated new generation.
Yeah, 90%.
And in fact, this year it's 95% of all new generation in the United States is wind and solar. But I think utility scale, and we see utility scale gets a lot of attention, and it is kind of a transitional technology. But to my way of thinking, distributed energy is really where the answer will be. They like utility scale solar, they like utility scale wind because, again, it is a centralized monopoly generating point that is controlled by the utilities. But the utility industry is an industry in decline. And we need to understand this. If you look at the telecommunications industry in the 1980s and what the telecommunication industry looks like today, it underwent tremendous structural changes from Ma Bell with a phone hanging on your wall to something that does not resemble that industry at all. Well, we're in the early stages in the electrical end of that same transition where utilities are in this mode. It goes back to the quote of Gandhi, you know, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they attack you, and then you win. Well, utilities are attacking solar distributed energy because it is an existential threat to their existence.
Right.
And so the utility of the future will not be the utility that we're dealing with.
Exactly.
And we're dealing with a situation economically. And I always come from all of this as economic because I don't believe people do things because it's the right thing to do. I think they do things because it's in their economic self-interest to do it.
Well, some people do, and you know, moral stuff does have sway. But you're right, and you know, the one thing that strikes me the most important dynamic on the earth today, and I say this advisedly, is the relentless progress of wind and solar.
Sure.
They cannot resist the astounding technological breakthroughs that continue to come with wind and solar.
Right. And we're in the floppy disk age of solar right now. You know, I mean,
well, the other big issue, and we got to keep moving on this, Jay. I got Lee waiting for us. But the other big issue is the transition of battery technology from lithium to sodium. And that is a really, really big deal. Having lived with the nuclear issue all these years, you know, batteries have become an essential part of the transition to renewables. No one would deny that. But right now we're stuck with lithium-based batteries, and it has to transition to sodium because sodium is way cheaper and it's also far less toxic. Lithium is very toxic, and we cannot spread around the world a battery array of lithium batteries.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid, you know, we've always discussed lithium as a transition technology. I think that transition is going to be long because the lithium technology has gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and the sources for it have become more and more abundant. So I don't disagree with you that lithium is not a destructive technology, because it is. But I think that is a technology we're going to have to learn to deal with because it's not going anywhere soon.
Well, to me, in my world, I see lithium as an equivalent in many ways to nuclear. And but we'll come back to that, Jay. But you know, we just had a terrible fire in California at the Morro Bay lithium facility. And we can't have that again. So it's something we can talk about. Also, BYD, the Chinese car company, has come out with a car with a sodium battery, which is a very big deal. So let's keep our eyes on that, and we'll discuss it further. We'll go to Steve, Paul, Marion, and then Jay will give you a last word, and then we're going to go to Lee Felsenstein. Steve?
Yeah, the alternative is fracking. I put a couple graphics up where it shows these horizontal frac lines going 4 miles under the ground. I can imagine somebody living above those lines and what goes on at night. Unbelievable. So it's either fracking or we go alternative with solar. And this is what Ohio's been obfuscating for a long time, 3 decades. And now Elon Musk wants to build out these AI farms in New Albany and supply them with energy from fracked gas turbines. Why haven't we had wind turbines put in place already? Why haven't we had solar put in place already? Absolutely. Thank you.
You're 100% right. Thank you for that, Steve. I'm Paul Newman, Marion, and we'll go back to Jay, and then we'll go to Lee Felsenstein. Go ahead, Paul. Paul Newman.
Yes, I'm here. I had to unmute. They didn't put up the.
Go ahead.
Anyway, the reason I'm talking is back in the late 70s or early 80s, when I was in the university, I did a research paper on alcohol fuel. And what I learned about it was that Archer Daniel Midland, who also offered me a job from that paper I wrote, basically what they would do is take the corn, and when they would ferment it it would break down the corn into simple sugars. They would take the ethanol out and then use the corn as cattle feed, and they would feed the cattle. Now, I don't know if that system is still going or not, Jay, but I'm just wondering if you can enlighten me on that, or do they just throw the fermented corn away when they make alcohol fuel from ethanol? I mean, ethanol from corn.
Right. I don't think they throw the husks and the remaining part away, although I would guess that most of its nutritional value is gone. But I have seen that they do some of the things with that in anaerobic biodigesters. They'll use what's left over as soil embellishments in areas to make the soil retain more moisture.
Well, what it did for animal feed was it made the corn into more simple sugars. And as a result, that's why it made an excellent animal feed. Now, like I say, it may turn into biomass, and then they use it to create methane or whatever from that. But, this was 80s technology. I don't know if it's still around today. I don't know what they use the ethanol for either.
Well, the corn is a bad source. It's a really dumb source of fuel, very inefficient. Really, the main reason is because the presidential primaries are held in Iowa. That's really why we had
right. Well, whatever happened, everybody was talking about hemp. Hemp was going to be the great biofuel. Yeah. And of course, if you burn it in artichoke, you can stone an entire city, but what the heck? Mary and Edie, and then we'll finish with Jay, and we're going to go to Lee Felsenstein.
Oh, thank you. Well, just quickly, I would say that all forms of combustion are more problematic than alternative non-combustion forms, which is why, of course, I'm a great fan of wind and solar. But I wanted to speak for a moment, Sluggo, you may know details about this. I think we need to promote solar. I don't think it's a good idea to promote it in a totally blind way without any standards. And in some cases, especially for wind, more wind than solar, there are threats to important migration routes for wildlife, for bats, and for things like this. And there is sometimes standards of things which can be done, which are really simple, which really lower those impacts. For example, I'm told painting turbines black.
One blade. One of the three blades needs to be black.
Yeah, it really lowers the mortality for birds.
40%. You're right.
And in some places, they migration ridgelines, they shouldn't be put. And I think I remember, Sluggo, that one wind project in Ohio on the lake was opposed not only by stalkers from the fossil fuel industry, but also from the American Bird Conservancy, which is a completely legit environmental organization.
Right.
So I think
you're right about that. And we do have an example. The very first major wind farm in the U.S. was at Altamont Pass.
That's where it was.
California. And those windmills had lattice towers, so the birds would perch, and the wind blades were really fast. These were 50, 100 kilowatt machines, small machines, and they killed tons of birds. And Jerry Brown put that farm in his first term, and then he came back when he came in his second term, and one of the first things he did was take it down and put up a new generation of windmills. And I actually was at a wind conference and I had a big argument with the guys who put in the first wind farm, and we forced them to put in, monopolar towers that were much bigger and killed far fewer birds. So you're 100% right. I know Camilla Reese is on. There are same arguments with solar panels on rooftops. How do we deal with electromagnetic frequencies? Because the DC current that's created in the solar originally does not create EMF, but when you switch it over to AC, it does. And that has to be dealt with. So there are issues. You're 100% right. So we can't go blindly into the night here, or into the daytime for that matter. Okay, Marion, did you want to add to that?
No, I'm done. I appreciate getting those air times. I have to leave soon, actually.
Okay, well, thank you, Marion. Great to be with you. Jay, and then we're going to go to Lee, who's been very patiently waiting.
No. Well, I'll just say that any system when it's taken to a certain scale, will cause problems. So I don't want anyone to think solar is a panacea or wind is a panacea, because all of these technologies do cause problems when they're at a certain scale. But one of the things I like to tell the students is government in this transition that we're going through can tinker around the edges of this process. It can accelerate things by a year or two. It can retard things by a year or two. But the progress is literally being driven by economics, and it will go up and to the right. Wind and solar is progressing in a way just as we went from burning wood into burning coal, into burning oil, and now we're into the age of renewable energy. And it doesn't mean there aren't going to be problems, but nuclear costs 5 times as much as wind and solar, coal 3 times as much. This is not including externalized costs. Natural gas twice as much as wind and solar. Wind is only available where the resource is, but solar is pretty much available everywhere. And that is why solar is winning. It is the most economic form of energy. And we're in a transition point right now where we've had pretty steady demand on electricity for the last 2 decades. That's about to change, and it's changing right now because it's being driven by the electrification of the automobile industry, the advent of AI, the development of silly cryptocurrencies, and the electrification of everything. So most people are seeing we're going to see a 50% demand increase over the next.
Well, we'll see if that actually happens. Jay, let's take this up again next week. I want to get Ron Leonard in, and I want to talk about Jamaica and the Caribbean islands. So if you'll join us, and more about Ohio, and which really is something I'm really obsessed about. Thank you so much, everybody, on this piece of the discussion. Lee Felsenstein, we're going to move to our last major topic here. Thank you for being so patient. In the wake of the George Floyd incident, we had tremendous rallies. Nobody gathered the data. Now we're having rallies again with Bernie and AOC, probably even bigger. What do you think we can do to improve the follow-up and the information gathering from these rallies?
Well, I've been working on this. My part of it is the theory. First of all, we can pass out business cards with QR codes, each which will send the phone that shoots it to a website. And if we arrange things right, which is going to take an organization, which is not yet created, but maybe it is. Somebody's on here from one organization talked with me about it. We can have this as a service to everybody who's doing rallies, so that first, before the rally, we help them set up the websites. Websites are questionnaires or whatever they want to learn from the person who's calling in. Then we'll help them set them up. We'll help them make the QR codes, which are basically the URLs for websites, and provide what resources we can in terms of helping them get the business cards printed up. And of course, the business card that came from this conference, you can't remember the name of the woman pointing it out, but she was right. They survive much longer than leaflets do after the rally. You can pass them along. Then we would basically, again, provide assistance in getting QR codes printed up. You can print whatever you like on the back of the business card. And you can use a particular color for a particular rally, which you don't tell anyone about. So if somebody's going to try to spoof it, they don't know the color of the day. And you announce the color. If it's not this color, ignore it.
It'll be like warning people about the brown acid at Woodstock.
Could be. At least it's brown, yeah. At least they didn't have to do chemical assays. And the point being, then it may take a little additional coordination, because at each rally you can have multiple groups give out their cards, and everybody should take every one of them. That's why you have stuff on the back of the card saying what this is about. And so you click on that, you get to a URL, the website. It's possible to do this in 2 stages, so that for one rally, there's one website for the whole thing. And that's what I call the dispatch website, because you have the groups listed along and you choose which ones you want, and you go to their website. And the purpose is for the groups to get your information, not only who you are and what your contact is, but what you're interested in, what you'll help with, and what ideas you have or whatever. Create a back channel. I call it reverse the media. And so I've written up some emails about this. They've gone out to at least one person who's on this call. And basically I'm waiting for them to get back to me and say, okay, we got some people together, let's talk about it. So I'm open for that. I'm not the one who's going to organize all of it. If you do that, it's going to take years. So never mind that way. So that's where we stand on it. There's an alternative that I've been talking about where you would send a text message in, but I've researched that and it's going to take months to set that up. So that's really not viable from a short-term perspective. One thing I want to say, which is not relevant to this, but I'm an electrical engineer and I couldn't resist pointing out that, the disaster they had with the grid in Europe, Portugal and Spain, that happened on the very day that at least Spain went all alternate energy, all renewable. They were going all on wind and solar. And to me, that says the grid went chaotic because every one of those stations, every installations has to synchronize to something. You got to get the waveforms all in synchronization or you've got a disaster in there. And so you synchronize to what you see. It's like you're in an orchestra, you synchronize to the conductor. Now, what if the conductor is not there? Well, the orchestras right now, they synchronize to the bow of the lead of the first violinist. But what if there is no first violinist? You play along with the people you can hear, and that can go chaotic. And I suspect that that's what happened there, which means that the grids are going to have to be upgraded. So there is some sort of means of synchronizing to some common 60 or 50 hertz. And I just want to warn people about this. People are going to be saying that, well, this proves that, alternate energy won't work. Doesn't prove anything of the like.
No.
We've been working on this for decades.
Right.
They need to be listened to.
So here, for those of you just joining us that are new, we've been discussing over the weeks with Lee in the lead. And Lee is a great pioneer, a godfather of Silicon Valley on his good side, Valley, we're concerned about, and it came from a line in a wonderful book he wrote, that these big demonstrations, if there's no follow-up and there's no gathering of contacts, basically they turn into photo ops. So we've been trying to figure out with Lee and Mike and others how to get people to give their names and their addresses and their emails so that there can be follow-up. And there have been various proposals, but Lee has helped us narrow it down. If you pass out a business card, not a leaflet, a business card, obviously it'll be on recyclable paper or recycled paper. Obviously, it will have a union label. And then it will have a QR code that will take you to a website. Now, the dangers have been, and jump in, correct me, whatever, that someone could fraudulently forge a QR code that will take you to a bad place. So this is the first I've heard. This is a brilliant idea that the organizers of the rally can print the business card on a color of ink that will not be known until very minutes or whatever before the rally. And so, like at Woodstock, they said, well, don't eat the brown acid. And, here you would say, only go with the magenta card, or the pink one or whatever. And that's a brilliant idea. That never occurred to me. But then the question, of course, is who is going to create and manage the website that the QR code will take you to, and what will they do with it?
Well, that should be the organizers of the rally. And if they want to subdivide that into various groups, they can do it. I would suggest keep it at one point and then just, allow people to click off to other various groups they like. So that's where
millions of people have been rallying around the country. I guess in some cases they are getting QR codes. In some cases, people are doing something.
RSVP.
This is a more advanced idea, Lee. Right?
Well, I do, but it's not going to organize itself. Okay.
Right. Well, so the people have been I mean, literally millions of people have been coming out to these rallies. Certainly more than came out after George Floyd. But the question is, where's the follow-up? Are they photo ops or are they organizing opportunities? And this idea of a QR code on a business card with a union label and recycled paper or hemp paper that you could smoke at the rally if you wanted, I guess, and then with a pre ordained color coding to prevent against forgery, that makes a certain sense. And the question is, the organizers get control, I guess, of the QR code and of the resultant website, and hopefully they'll do the right thing. Is that the basic idea?
It is, yes. And there is going to have to be an organization that is just there to help, there to advise, there to just keep an eye on things. If something starts to veer off into unsavory territory, that they need to know about it and inform others and so forth.
Right. Well, no doubt somebody is going to turn up with a fake card that's going to take you to Pornhub, but we don't want that. Steve Caruso, go ahead.
Yeah, so I went to a local rally and Indivisible is handing out cards with a QR code, and that's great. I mean, people can go to their website at leisure and see what's going on when they have time because they've got family to take care of, they got this and that, and they need to plug in when they can plug in, and not everybody has to plug in all the time. But the other thing, here's my voice, AI and their banks are now asking for your voice pattern. My voice is a QR code. I'm saying impeachTrumpAgain.org. Okay, you got that. That's in your memory. That is not a QR code, and that'll work just as good. So, you could do all this kind of social engineering. We're going to do this and do that, but, we have to be fluid too. We have to let things take their own course, and people are inspired to do something and they have the time, they'll do it. And
I hadn't heard that.
It's not like my lazy cat. I got to get up and kick, so I don't kick him, but
all right,
he's not lazy either. He'll go play with the ball if I motivate him a little bit. But
okay,
it's news to me that the individual was handing out QR codes. Like, what? I'm not the sole inventor, of course. That's
well,
good.
It's been discussed because of you, so and because of your book. So, what else you got to add here?
Me?
We should do a generic memo to go to all rally organizers to put these basic ideas out. I did hear at one point that somebody very wisely, I was in LA, handed out a flyer with a QR code, and they got a world of grief because it didn't have a union bug on it. So we got to think about that thing. Yeah. And then I love the idea of the color coding. That's fabulous. And of course, it's got to be on recycled paper.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember all those pictures from the 30s, guys with union buttons on their cap. Well, I understand, and I could be wrong on this. But when you paid your dues, you exchanged your button for a new one with a different color. So you'd stand out in a crowd if you hadn't paid your dues. It may or may not have happened, but it should have. So we can do that with the color also.
Well, Lee, please send me your latest stuff, and I will turn out an article about this idea, because we know that millions and millions of people are going to continue to rally. And so the rally organizers should, although a lot of rallies seem to be pretty spontaneous. I mean, there are rallies happening where people don't even have stages or speeches.
Right. I was at one. I made up a sign, went out, and we're all standing there showing signs, and the cars are honking like crazy. There was no speeches. I wasn't even sure who organized it. But if I'm going to write something for everybody to read, I want to be able to tell them where to go, how to follow through, because that's part of my requirement. So,
and you're developing also a parallel network. So, I think so.
I'm trying. I mean, this is getting in the way a little bit, but that's
just send me the link and send me your latest stuff, and I'll write it up, and we'll move ahead with it. Okay. So that was great, Lee. That's really the culmination. I don't know if people know, but we've been discussing this for a while, and that's the culmination of a lot of our thought. We still have 44 people with us, for God's sakes. We're at 4:07 Eastern time, California time. So we're going to adjourn in 13 minutes, and everybody can go toke up. Does anybody else have anything you want to jump in on? I have something that's completely out of left field. Okay, Mimi, I'll get to you in 1 second. I was flying back on a flight on United, and I watched a great documentary about Led Zeppelin. I was not a big Led Zeppelin fan, but I did learn that in 1969, their fourth album outsold Abbey Road, and they were number one ahead of the Beatles. And I know this sounds ridiculous. I've always wondered, does anybody know what "keep a coolie baby" means? I just couldn't understand that lyric. If anybody has an explanation for KEEPA, coolie, COOLEY, baby, please tell me. Jimmy Page was singing it. I thought it was great, but I always wondered if it meant anything at all. If you know,
cool baby.
Keep a coolie baby.
Keep cool baby.
Is that so? Why did it say coolie? Just for
effect.
Poetry reasons? If you know, if you can ask Jimmy Page, that would be great. He was in the documentary. Anyone wants to see a good rock and roll documentary? It's called Becoming Led Zeppelin. Okay, Mimi from California, you got your hand. Carl, I'm going to see you on Thursday in Manhattan. If anybody's in New York and Manhattan, there's a fundraising lunch with Alec Baldwin and Carl Grossman at around noon on Thursday in Midtown. If you're in New York and want to come, email me and I'll give you the detail. But Carl and I will be there with Alec Baldwin. Mimi, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much, Sluggo and Gigi and Mike for and Mike for organizing. I wanted to let you all know that the Make Polluters Pay Superfund bill in California, that we are going to have a lobby day in Sacramento on May 28th, and then there will be a rally the night before on the 27th. And more information can be found at polluterspay.net.
Put that in the chat. And Mimi, I hope you'll print up business cards with QR codes and a secret color on recycled paper with a union label for that rally. That would be great.
It's actually organized by Center for Biological Diversity, and they do have signups.
Okay, we'll talk about that. But you know, my history with sign-up sheets on clipboards is that it's really hard to do. And you know, see if they want to do the. I'll send you. I'll write this up and send out a memo on it, and see if they want to be the first. Okay, thank you for that, Mimi. Put it in the chat, please. Steve Caruso.
Yeah, Harvey, what was the event again? It's a fundraiser for what?
It's in Manhattan. So Carl Grossman and I will be there with Joe Mangano, who's been on this, and the committee to radiation public health on monitoring health impacts around nuclear plants. And Alec Baldwin will be the keynoter, and Carl and I will be there. So it's around noon on Thursday in Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah, so the Ohio EPA just came out with a statement saying that the testing in Piketon hasn't been appropriate. I mean, the Ohio EPA has been here for how long? How long's Piketon been here? And now all of a sudden they're coming out. That's great. You know, I gotta love them for that. But
in Ohio, we need to get rid of that setback clause so that we can build windmills in the North Coast. And the whole state could be powered with those windmills.
Well, that's the whole thing behind the movement against solar and alternative energy. Are people are afraid it's going to impose on them. You got people in Australia there's a video on YouTube, one video, you know, that's a whole thing of people complaining about what happened and things were tore up and I got a windmill 5 meters away from my house and that kind of thing. So yeah, like we said earlier, we got to make sure just because it's alternative energy doesn't mean they have the right to go around and destroy the environment, right? Or harm people or, make trouble for the local.
Well, 5 meters is definitely too close to a house.
Right. Now, I can't believe that's happening, but
no, I don't either.
That's another excuse for somebody to cry wolf.
Wolf, exactly. Okay, Lee Felsenstein, thanks for being with us. You got a last word for us? Is your last word goodbye?
Yeah, it's a goodbye.
All right.
Good luck.
Well, we'll need it. So send me your latest stuff. I'll turn it into a memo. We'll put it out, or I'll turn it into an article, and we'll put it out for general consumption.
People have got to be other than spectators on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else want to jump in? Or we got 7 minutes. We can adjourn early.
Let me jump in, Harvey. I'll be writing a column. I can send it to you next week on the call. But here's a press release from Green Education and Legal Fund, Mark Dunley. Governor Hochul, this is Kathy Hochul, she's the New York governor, is making a major push to not only build new nuclear power plants in New York State, but to make New York the center of a nuclear revival in the United States. So you have the situation on the West Coast, and we have a serious situation in terms of a governor pushing nuclear in New York State.
A Democrat, another pro-nuclear Democrat, got him in New York and Michigan and in California. It's ridiculous. I mean, what's the point here?
Well, the point is that on both Republican and Democratic sides, these characters have been drinking the nuclear Kool-Aid and are pushing nuclear. I mean, the predecessor to Kathy Hochul, Andrew Cuomo, he set up a plan which is still underway in New York. It runs for 12 years for a $7.6 billion bailout for some of these upstates. There's 3 nuclear power plants, 4 reactors in upstate New York, and it's a surcharge on everybody's bill in New York State. It's happened now for almost 10 years. It's going to go on for a few more years, and not just one's private bill, but businesses, nonprofits, institutions, a real push, a heavy push in New York State. In Hochul's State of the State address in January, she outlined this big push, this promotion for nuclear power in New York, and she's moving on it. Again, she follows Cuomo's bailout scheme, which is affecting everybody in New York State, and it's really something. The only, in terms of politics, issue here is that the Republican Party in New York State is as wild about nuclear as the Democrats. In fact, the one thing here that there's not any kind of party conflict on is nuclear power. The leadership of the Democratic Party, in terms of public officials, and the Republican Party, all wanting to go nuclear with this excuse of these times that it's necessary to deal with climate change, and it's important because of energy needed for artificial intelligence stuff and so forth. It's a new push to, they've been calling it for decades, a nuclear renaissance. It's a new so-called nuclear renaissance push. And I'll be mentioning it at the luncheon, the Radiation and Public Health Project luncheon in Manhattan on Thursday.
Fantastic. Well, I'll see you there. And we got 4 minutes here. Steve and Mike are 2 co-conspirators here. Did you want to say something? Thank you, Carl. I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, I just want to get everybody used to the idea that whenever you hear about these pro-nuclear power plants, these radioactive disasters waiting to happen, the real push behind that is fissionable material to update our nuclear weaponry. It has nothing to do with economics. It has nothing to do with energy needs or efficiency. As we've discussed earlier, renewables are cheaper, more reliable, obviously much cleaner and safer, but you can't use a solar panel to threaten Armageddon on the Russians or the Chinese or whoever we choose to bully. So it's as simple as that. And we shouldn't let people off the hook by even considering that they're making credible arguments in terms of we need this energy, this, that, or the other. No, it's we need it to threaten other countries. That's the beginning and the end of it. And that's one more form of nuclear insanity. It's not that they don't understand that it's inefficient, dangerous, vulnerable to attack and all the rest. They understand all that. They're willing to sacrifice human beings, our safety, jack up cancer rates and endanger people even when nothing goes wrong, because they want to be able to threaten other nations with nuclear weapons. And we can never let them get away ignoring that. That's the motivation.
Okay, very well stated.
It's
Carl?
a key motivation. And one of the Hochul's big excuses, too, is that New York State can't meet its renewable energy plan for several years from now. So thus nuclear has to be embraced at this point. She's not pushed very hard at all on renewables. And furthermore, and this is so important to discuss and to tell these people that nuclear power is not carbon free whatsoever, though.
That's right.
Even the New York Times will say an emission free nuclear power. The nuclear fuel cycle, mining, milling, enrichment, and so forth is heavily.
And it's going to take forever to get these new plants up and running. The old ones are falling apart. So if they're in a hurry, then they should go with wind and solar. That's much easier and quicker to deploy, as you well know, Carl. Thank you so much for keeping
the
an
other
eye on
thing
this.
that's at stake here, of course, in addition to the fissionable material, is the ongoing existence of the utility industry in general, which is living in absolute terror of decentralized renewables. 1 minute left. Steve, and then Mimi, you'll get the last word. Steve Caruso, and then Mimi.
Yeah, they don't keep in mind that the destruction of the Pikeman plant has prevailed upon a community in the state of Ohio. How much Germany is dropping nukes like a lead balloon. Perhaps we could find some other, I don't want to say weapon, we just have to find peace, but get around the nuclear issue all the way with something altogether that's different. You got fission happening or fusion happening, research, but they're spending millions of dollars and it's just not getting anywhere to do that. And there's probably a way to do all this, but we haven't found it yet.
Okay, thank you. Mimi, you get the last word here. Oh, unmute you. Still have 39 people. Go ahead, Mimi.
Sorry. Well, don't forget in California, we have that horrible bill called Pathways that, it's called for regionalization of our grid, but it's to give away our grid power to other states of fossil fuel states. And that's Bill SB 540. And it's confused a lot of people because I think it concerns scientists. I forget, but some climate justice groups have hopped onto it, but it's very suspicious because PG&E has hopped onto it. Right. All the big tech groups, because they want that energy for their data centers. So I don't know if you've done a show yet on.
Well, we'll do it next week. Come back with us next week and we'll talk about it. Okay, Mimi?
Okay. Sounds
all right,
good.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Carl, Mike, Steve, Mimi, Myla, everybody. It's been great. Paul Newman, really another great week, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. And maybe by next week, Trump will be Pope. All right, you guys. No nukes. See you next week. We'll see you in Solartopia.
Okay. Bye, everyone.